Here we are in section 8-1, exercises numbers 23 through 30. Here we're going to solve each of the following equations, but remember we're going to do it by completing the square. Notice these are the 4 steps in the textbook. Leading coefficient needs to be equal to 1, first of all. Remove the constant term, add that plus b over 2 squared to both sides, and then go ahead and perfectly square it. Square root, don't forget the plus and minus, and that's how we'll solve it. Now this one's already in a perfect square form, so we're clear down to number 4, where all we need to do is square root, and put a plus and a minus on there. We get x minus 7 equals plus or minus, don't forget that, and then the square root of a negative is an I. Let me see, 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. That means we got one set that'll come out. I times 2 times the square root of 2. Good. Now when we add 7 to both sides, we have x equals a positive 7 plus or minus 2i square roots of 2. And that could be written as 2 different answers, 7 plus 2i square roots of 2 and 7 minus 2i square roots of 2, if you so chose. That would work just as well. All right, number 24. Okay, let's start. Leading coefficient equals 1. True. Remove the constant term. So we're going to write x squared minus 8x, and then we're going to subtract this 16 over to that other side. So we get a negative 11. That's important to do. Subtract that 16 over, so we have left that space in there. So now we're going to add half of b, so that's negative 4 squared, to both sides. So we're actually going to add 16 right there to both sides of it. Yeah, it's kind of like we just we could have done that from the beginning. Just use that plus 16. So right, we know what we're doing right now. So we get, this is x minus 4 perfectly squared equals positive 5. Yeah, we could have just skipped straight down from here to here. Half of 8 squared is 16. That was in the original problem. All right, now we have a perfect square. We can square root both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. So we get x minus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. When we add 4 to both sides, we now get x equals plus 4, plus square root of 5, and 4 minus the square root of 5. Good. Number 25. Let's see if they did this one just the same way. Half of 18 squared is 81. Oh, they treated us very nicely. This is x plus 9 perfectly squared equals negative 3. So when we square root and square root both sides, plus or minus, we get x plus 9 equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Subtract 9 from both sides and we get x equals negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 3. And that, that was nice. They gave us quite a bit of hint there. Okay, on number 26. See, this one's not a perfect square. So yeah, we'll have to go through all steps on this one. First of all, leading coefficient 1, got it. Remove that constant term over to the other side. So subtract 13 and we get x squared minus 6x equals a negative 13. Let's leave that space there to complete the square. Half of 6 is 3. Negative 3 squared is 9. So when we add 9 to both sides, what we have just created on this side is x minus 3 perfectly squared. And that equals negative 13 plus 9. That's a negative 4. So when we square root and square root, don't forget the plus and minus, we get x minus 3 equals plus or minus 2 and I, 2i. So when we add 3 over here, we get x equals 3 plus or minus 2i. Good. Next one, number 27. Step number 1, leading coefficient is 1. Yes. Next, remove that constant term, take that over there to the other side, and make it x squared plus 14x equals negative 2. Good. Now, we're going to take half of 14 squared. So half of 14 is 7 squared. Add 49 in there. Add 49 to both sides, make sure it happens on both sides of the equation, and we end up with, this is x plus 7 perfectly squared equals 47. Square root, plus or minus. We have x plus 7 equals plus or minus the square root of 47. Does that factor or simplify at all? I don't think so. Subtract 7 from both sides and we get x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 47. So that's two separate answers, negative 7 plus the square root of 47 and negative 7 minus the square root of 47. Okay, let's do number 28. Okay, leading coefficient is 1. Yes, let's remove that constant term over to the other side. So we have x squared minus 3x equals a negative 15. Now we're going to add b over 2 and then squared to both sides. So 3 halves, let me write that down here just for a minute. 3 halves squared to both sides. So we got to add 9/4 to both sides, plus 9/4. There we go. So we really created, when we added that 9/4, we now have x minus 3 halves perfectly squared equals, this is negative 60/4 plus 9/4 is negative 51/4. All righty, now square root both sides, square root with a plus or a minus, and we get x minus 3 halves equals plus or minus square root of negative I. 51 doesn't simplify at all. Square root of 4 on the bottom is a 2. So then we can add 3 halves to both sides, and we get x equals positive 3 halves plus or minus I square root of 51 over 2. Good. Let's circle that. There's our answer right there. All right, number 29. We got to get the leading coefficient equal to 1. So we've got to divide everything by 2 and remove this guy off to the other side. So x squared minus 1/2 x. And then if we take that over, that's a minus 30 over 2. That's a negative 15 over there then. Okay? So now we've got to take half of this. I'll put that down here like that. And squared, that's what we got to add to both sides. So half of that is 1/4. Squared is 1/16. Wow, that's a pretty small little fraction there. 1/16. Good. Okay. And what did we create over here? When we did that, we completed the square and made x minus 1/4 perfectly squared. And you can actually multiply that back out and see that it actually gets you x squared minus 1/2 x plus 1/16 equals, this is negative 240 over 16, right? Negative 240 over 16. I put that over 1 times by 16 times by 16. So we get negative 240 over 16 plus 1 over 16. So that is negative 239 over 16. Square root, plus or minus, don't forget that. And so we have x minus 1/4 equals plus or minus I square roots of 239. Does 239 simplify at all? I don't think so. 3 won't go into it. 7 will go into it. All right, and that's over, what's the square root of 16 is 4. Not 14, 4. And then add 1/4 to both sides, and we get x equals 1/4 plus or minus I square roots of 239 over 4. I suppose with imaginary numbers, we could have put the I right out there if we would have wanted to. That would have been perfectly all right. But here's our answer. Oh, good. All right, and number 30. First, we've got to get the leading coefficient equal to 1. Let's go ahead and do that. X squared plus 5/4 x plus 15 equals 0. Remove the constant term. Step 2, x squared plus 5/4 x equals the negative 15. Good, we have a little space here. Let's complete the square, take half of 5/4, so that's 5/8. That's half of 5/4, and then square it. So we got to add that 25. 8 times 8 is 64. Oh boy, this is going to be a big number when we add those fractions together. Let's go ahead and put that on together on this side. We have x plus 5/8 squared. We just made a perfect square equals, and then we get a very large number. Let's go ahead and punch that in. 15, common denominator of 64. Punch that in the calculator. 64 times 15 is 960. So this is really negative 960 64ths plus 25 64ths. That's going to equal negative 935 over 64. Wow. All right, square root, plus or minus, and we get x plus 5/2. That's nice. 5/8, excuse me, 5/8. The square and the square root just undid each other. Over on the other side, we get plus or minus I times the square root of 935 over the square root of 64, which is 8. Notice that squaring and then that square rooting. Eventually, you get up with the exact same denominators. That's kind of handy. And then subtract 5/8 from both sides. So we get x equals negative 5/8 plus or minus I square roots of 935 over 8. And again, the I could go out here if you wanted it in a plus bi format for a complex number. Yeah, this never would have factored. Look at that. In fact, most of these, nope, none of them wouldn't have factored. So that's good to know. That's good to know. Also, let's see if 935 simplifies at all. Let's just check it really quick. 935, that's 5, and looks like that is 11 times 17. Yep, no perfect square in there, so here's our answer. Good.